So I think I was 49 at the time, and he said, let's learn how to skateboard. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Learn how to skateboard at 49? Dude, fuck yeah.
Basically, I T-boned a bus. I was going to pass it because it was parked, and it must have pulled out. I hit my brakes just kind of reactionary and went over and Supermaned into the bus and then underneath it somehow.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh God, dude.
Yeah. There was a lady that happened to be walking by. She was holding my hand when I opened my eyes. And the only thing I really said to her was, I'm a quadriplegic. Ask the bus driver to back over me. And then she started crying.
Oh.
And then I was out again.
Man, fuck yeah. I'm so stoked. Today we were sitting down with a father and a certified badass, Brad Arseneau. So to give the folks a little context here, I've got a buddy who reached out to me, and he sent me this article, and the article was Brad's story. And so I started reading the article, and I got maybe, I don't know, 2 paragraphs in, and I went, nah. I fucking closed it. I said to my pal Ian, I said, yo, send Brad my way. We got to get him on the show ASAP. And so we are here today to hear Brad's story, which is it's epic. It's an epic story, and I can't wait to dive into it. Brad, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we dive into it all, introduce yourself to Brian, myself, and all of our listeners.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Anytime I get to tell the story, it's good for me mentally to keep diluting that story and processing the story. So it's great mentally. I think it's also important to let folks know that there's opportunity to be had out of a trauma.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, I'm a 53-year-old man, married with kids, 21-year-old, 19-year-old. So I'm an old guy. I grew up in New Brunswick. I owned a mountain bike snowboard shop in St. John, New Brunswick, with a bunch of my homies from that I grew up with. So I've been in the community for a long time, meaning adrenaline driven activities. Like,
yeah.
I'm an addict. There's addicts out there that have addictions to bad things. I have an addiction to adrenaline.
Yeah.
I have addiction to that feeling that you get inside your heart, inside your soul, when you do something that you're like, I never thought I could do that. And then you achieve it, and you get this crazy feeling, and it's an addiction to individuals like myself.
Yeah.
So
some might argue the addiction to adrenaline. I mean, so you said like there's addicts who are addicted to the bad things, and there's adrenaline junkies. Some might argue that being addicted to adrenaline could be a bad thing.
Well, it has served me some bad cards in life.
No doubt.
My wife has been to the hospital more than once.
Yeah.
From my addiction to that, but it'll never leave me. It's so that's who I am. During COVID, my son came to me. I think he was 17 at the time. He said, yo, Dad, we're sitting around on our asses here. Let's go do something. Let's learn something. So I think I was 49 at the time, and he said, let's learn how to skateboard. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, I have friends.
Skateboard at 49, dude.
Yeah. So I had friends that skateboarded when I was a kid. Growing up in St. John, New Brunswick, there's no fucking skate parks. And if you had a skateboard, you're skating around on chip seal, which is... And I probably did that once or twice. I said, hell no, I'm not doing this shit. But anyway, I picked it up at 49. I started skating. My son disappeared. He's like, I don't want to get hurt, because when you skate, that little toy, which is basically a toy, is out to kill you every time you step on it. Like, any skater that listens to this or is out there, no one skates that's not already hurt. Like, you're always hurt.
Yeah.
There's something always wrong with you.
Anyway. Let's put it this way, Brad. I picked up a skateboard when I was in grade 10 or 11. I had my license at this time. I picked it up for the first time. All my buddies were skating, and I was like, all right, well, you know, I'm gonna try it. I was a paddler. I was like a competitive paddler. So I ended up, I stopped paddling. I thought, you know what, I'll pick up skateboarding. It's cool. You know, like girls probably dig it. I picked up a skateboard. We were out in front of my house, and my first attempt at an ollie, I tried to ollie onto the grass. So I had a nice like soft place to land. So a moving ollie, I'm heading towards the curb. I try to pop the board up, and I pop up, fall down immediately. Somehow in that process of falling, the board flipped into the air and clipped me on the top of the head and opened me up. And when I say opened me up, I mean like it wasn't necessarily a massive hole, but it was enough that if you've never cut your head bleeds unlike anything else on the body. It's fucking wild. So all of a sudden now I look like I am on. I could have like been on the cover of a metal like album. My face was just covered in fucking blood, and so I wipe myself down. I go inside. My mom's like, Jesus fucking Christ, Jeremy. Like, what happened to you? I was like, the skateboard hit me. So my mom's a nurse. She takes a couple steri strips and she like strips my head back together. And she goes, I think you might need stitches. And I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to go back out with the boys. So we went out. We were like, whatever. We went out to like fucking knock on someone's door and run away or whatever the fuck we were up to. And and the blood just like kept seeping out. And eventually a buddy of mine was like, dude, you need to go to the hospital. Like you are opened up. So I was like, all right, I grabbed my keys. I took my mom's car, didn't tell her where I was going, picked up the car, drove to the hospital. I arrived and they were like, holy sweet Jesus, you need stitches stat. And they were like, how did you, do you have someone to give you, how did you get here? And I was like, oh, I drove. And they were like, motherfucker, you should not be driving. You should not be, you've lost so much blood. Anyway, all that to say, that was the first and last time I ever touched a fucking skateboard, and I couldn't stick with it. So good on you.
I grew up skating, so
I love it.
It is. It's an addiction, right? It's like Lego. You learn how to ollie, then you know that's one of your first building blocks. That's what I love about skating is it's a continuous progression of building blocks on top of blocks on top of blocks on top of blocks. So every time I go skate, which is probably 3 hours a day, it's adding a new block to the pile. And it's a never-ending process. So it never gets old. What does get old is getting fucking hurt every day. Yeah. And at 53 years old, my body doesn't rebound like it used to, right? Yeah. So that's kind of who I am, and because I've been around that community my whole life, right from high school. Like we started mountain biking in 1989, I believe. So we were mountain biking before it was cool, and racing. We raced with a ton of people from Nova Scotia, from Halifax, from all over the place. And then snowboarding, we started snowboarding like in 1990, and we would just jerry rig like water skis together because we couldn't buy snowboards, right? Like so, but I never skated. But I was around those people. I was around the culture, which I was around because skating is much more than just skating. It's like it's the music, it's how you dress, it's all kinds of stuff that encompasses that whole community in that world.
I'm really curious, Brad. Like when you're like 49 years old, going to a skate park. You live in Toronto, so I'm assuming you were going down to the park or skateboarding near your place, and you know, as a 49-year-old learning something new. I think a lot of people, as they get older in life, they just kind of become comfortable with the things that they can do and the things that they think they can't do. And learning something new can be, you know, it's a very vulnerable experience because, you know, especially if you're doing something in public where there's people watching you, you know, you might be embarrassed that you can't do it or haven't done it before. What was that experience like, learning something new at 49?
The beautiful thing about doing it at 49 versus 14 or 15, you're not as self-conscious of what what people think of you. At least I'm not. I give zero fucks, right? I'm the opposite. I show up and there's all these people ripping. I'm absorbing their energy and watching what they're doing, and I'm trying to replicate that. And I'm, unlike a 16-year-old, I'll walk up to anybody at the park and say, "Yo, I was watching you. How do you do that?" And like and I still do that today. I go to any park on the east side of Toronto, and I can show up and know probably 50% of the people skating because I just talk to everybody, and I watch people, and you take bits, because everyone, if you grew up skating, you know that your buddy might be very good at transition, and you may be very good at flat ground, and everyone has their thing that they're really good at. And if you could start absorbing pieces from your buddies or from someone else at the park and understanding that, that's how you grow as not only as a skater, but you grow as a human being, because you're creating these relationships and you're just you're becoming more ingrained in that community within. So to answer your question, for me, I thrive on that shit. I thrive on doing something I can't do.
Yeah.
I want to go do something I can't do. Why the fuck am I going to do something? I mean, I'm not going to obsess over something I can do. I obsessed over shit I can't do.
Yeah. So okay,
Right?
I love that.
So you're in your late 40s. Your son and you decide, like, all right, we're gonna give this a shot. He quickly starts going, you know what, Dad, fuck this. This ain't for me. You're like, well, all right, cool. See ya. I'm gonna keep on it. You continue to skate, and this becomes this becomes a part of your identity.
This is now part of my soul. Like, I'm like fully ingrained, and I'm sitting in my basement right now, and I built during, once we'll get to that point, but after my accident, when I couldn't move and I couldn't do anything, I built a skate shop in my basement. So I got a full skate shop in my basement. Wow. I got more stuff in here than you get at your local skate shop. So it's like it became a part of my DNA very quickly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the accident.
So for folks that are following along with the story, obviously you started skating in your 40s. You said you had an accident. Well, clearly the accident was you fucking up on a skateboard somehow, right? You must have fallen and fucked yourself up trying to do some vert tricks, or maybe grinding down like a set, like a long set, and you fucked it up, right?
No. No. So I guess from 49 to 51, I skated, obsessed. A local company met me, and we become to know each other. And over time, I became a team rider. So I'm actually on a local team. So I'm kind of like, I'm a team rider, but I'm like an evangelist. I'm an old guy that does cool shit, but not crazy shit, right? Mm-hmm. So I became a team rider within 2 years. So I went from learning how to kick turn to nose sliding a 16 set. So people see me nose sliding a 16 set, and they're like, "What the fuck? Like, how do you even get up on that? And how do you get the balls to do that?" And I said, "Because I've been doing crazy shit my whole life, and it's within my risk tolerance." For
the folks that don't know skateboarding, what does that mean? A 16 set? What is that?
Oh, sorry. So 16 stairs. So if you walk up to any big building downtown or whatever with 16 stairs going into it, usually there's a wall, or the stairs are kind of have a bound, like walls going up the side, and which in the skate community we call a hubba, which is just a big, maybe 2 or 3 foot tall boundary on the stairs. So you ollie up onto that and ride down on your nose. So it's I mean, skaters do that shit all the time, but a 53-year-old that just learned how to skate with the mentality that I'm going to go jump up on that, which is pretty high, and do that's that changed people's opinion on me, right? Yeah. So that's how. So I got to that point. So one morning, usually I'll skate before I log into work and do whatever I need to do for work, or I'll go at lunch. So COVID allowed us as a community to have a bit of more autonomous of our day, right? We're not sitting in an office all day, whatever. So I'd get up, go skate in the morning, or if that didn't work, I'd skate at lunch. So that day, I think it was January, March, I have to think. April 20th, 2023 is the day. I went to skate with the founder of the company that I was on as a team rider. Mm-hmm. We were skating. I was no sliding shit. I was doing all kinds of stuff. We got cool clips. So we got some clips that day. That day, and I never do this, I rode my mountain bike down for some reason. The boys that I was skating with, they went one way. I got on my mountain bike to go home. The next thing I remember getting a clip, a trick for the audience. I did a trick. Someone videoed it. I'm like, yes, I'm going home. I got a meeting at 1:30 I got to get home for. Next thing I remember is I open my eyes and I'm on a big giant fucking metal table at trauma unit at St. Mike's, laying there. Couldn't move from my neck down. So I was paralyzed from here down for hours.
Okay.
So
and when you woke up, what that memory of waking up and going, oh fuck, like what do you remember seeing? Who was there?
I don't know if you guys ever have. I hope you didn't have ever had to experience this. I'm sure some of the audience has, but when something like that happens, where the last thing you remember is eating ice cream or having a pizza or whatever, and then the next thing you open your eyes, you're in a fucking ambulance or on a it's like you're in like a science fiction movie. Like what's going on here, right? I did open my eyes in the ambulance and I couldn't move, right? Like I'm like, what the fuck? I can't move. I'm a paraplegic, right? And I basically said, just fucking kill me. Like, if I can't move, like, I don't like the feeling of looking down at your feet. I remember looking at my feet and I'm trying to wiggle my toes. Like I get the messages in my head and I'm trying to send them down.
Yeah.
And that shit ain't going. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what just happened to me, right? Like, last thing I remember is doing XYZ on my skateboard, and now I'm looking at my feet and I can't move them. My hands, I looked down at my hands and my hands were frozen like that.
Oh,
like they were concrete because of the nerves, and nothing moved, right? Just like I'm laying there with these hands that are like this and they're not moving.
And for the folks just listening, like what you were doing there with your hands, basically like making almost like claws with your hands, like all fingers bent, and like if you're gonna scare a little kid and go, wah, it's
exactly.
Yeah.
Brad,
your nerves, that nervous system, when it just like everything locked.
Yeah.
It was. Sorry, you have a question, or you want me to keep going?
Well, I was just gonna say I haven't been through a traumatic experience like that, but one night on Canada Day, actually, I had a little bit too much to drink, and I was at the party downtown in Ottawa, and the next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I wanted to ask you something that I'm obviously not very proud of, but it happened, and the one thing, like in hindsight, looking back on my experience, I didn't ask why or how I got there. All I knew is I wanted to get out of there. But like, fortunately, I wasn't paralyzed and I could, kind of get my stuff together and get out as quickly as possible. But obviously that's not the case for you when you're, as you said, paralyzed from the neck down. When you started to like realize that that's where you were and presumably saw, some of the healthcare providers that were there, what were, like, how did you start to put together what had happened in that moment?
Well, I knew I was really fucked when there was a social worker there. Right? Like, social workers aren't involved in these things unless it's fucking bad. Right? The police officer actually was the one who said, yo, you you get hit by a bus.
Whoa.
So I was actually
shit.
riding my bike home from the park, and to be honest, I don't remember any of it, but basically I T-boned a bus. Allegedly I was riding down, and I've raced my mountain bike a million miles in my life. Like I've should have killed myself 18, 20 times before this on my mountain bike. Not so people are like, how the fuck do you get hit by a bus? You've ridden your bicycle a million miles in your life. But anyway, I was riding down the street and I was going to pass it because it was parked, and it must have pulled out. You know how a bus swings out like after they pick up people at a stop.
Yeah.
Swung out. I hit my brakes just kind of reactionary, and went over and Supermaned into the bus and then underneath it somehow.
Oh my God.
And the reason why, and I don't know if that's exactly what happened, but the reason why I can tell you with a high percentage of confidence that that's what happened is my bike doesn't have a scratch on it, which implies I hit the brakes and went over the front.
Fuck.
And hit it and just crushed my C6 and C7.
So did you go under the wheel of did the bus?
Under the back wheel, but it didn't go over me, but it was sitting there.
Oh my God. Oh God, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So back up a little bit. I did open my eyes when I was under the bus. I do remember just briefly, and there was a lady that happened to be walking by. She was holding my hand when I opened my eyes. And the only thing I really said to her was, I'm a quadriplegic. Ask the bus driver to back over me. And then she started crying.
Oh, no.
And then I was out again. Because at that point, I was like, I'm a paraplegic. There's no fucking way.
Yeah.
I'm going through life this way. And I think that's a natural reaction for people in that situation.
Sure.
It's like, I'm not fucking dealing.
Sure.
I'm not doing this, right?
Yeah.
And then that's when I kind of was out again, opened up my eyes. And then to answer your question, the only way I kind of really knew what happened, because even at that time I wasn't even really conscious, really, right? My eyes may have been open, but I wasn't conscious. The police officer actually came into the trauma unit at St. Mike's to ask me questions while I was, they cut my clothes off. I'm laying there buck naked on this big giant metal slab, like they were kind of field dressing a deer or something. And I had every medical doctor, like every specialist poking me, prodding me. And then the police officers were like, I'm like, guys, I just fucking died. And you guys, they're just inundating me with so much stimulation. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it was so confusing. That was more confusing than how I got there. I was like, what is going on right now? I got a guy poking me with needles. I can't feel that. I got someone fucking twisting my head, which probably is not a good idea considering we don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I got a police officer asking me where he should take my bike. I'm like, dude, I don't give a fuck. You can take it home. I don't care. I did ask him where my skateboard was. I'm like, yo, where's my skateboard? Because I had a backpack with a skateboard on it.
Yeah.
He's like, don't worry about your skateboard. We got that in the trunk. So that's it. And then I laid there for quite a while, and the social worker continued to ask me like I was coming in and out of consciousness, and I'd come out and she'd be like, oh, hey, there you are. Do you want me to call your wife? I'm like, no, don't call I think it was 3 or 4 hours before I agreed to allow them to call my wife. I'm like, well, don't call her until we have something to tell her. I just don't want to tell her I'm lying here, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to put some substance to it. And one guy came in and he moved my neck around. He said, yeah, you're a lucky guy, dude. I think you just got a severely sprained neck. You can probably go home. I'm like, well, okay, I'm fucking going home. In my mind, I'm like, fuck, I got out of another one. How the hell did I do this?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I escaped another one. And then they're like, well, we're going to do some more imaging. And so anyway, the process went on and on and on. And then they did call my wife. And she as soon as she asked me, and she always asked me, so are you okay? And as soon as I said no, she hung up. As soon as I said no, because I never say no, I always say, yeah, I'm fine, right?
Yeah.
Broke my leg, broke my arm, fucking crushed my wrist, whatever. But I'm okay. Don't worry about it. As soon as I said no, she hung up, and she was like fucking panic stricken. She knew it was bad, right?
Yeah.
And
did she come straight to the hospital though?
Yeah, right from work to the hospital. But honestly, time for me was I was on a whole different clock.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
I didn't know what was going on. I remember my wife saying, hey, you want me to call your brother Rob, my brother Rob in Calgary, who, by the way, broke his back in a bunch of places and was almost killed. but he recovered in his running triathlons and shit.
It's not a competition, Brad. Okay.
Yeah,
it's not a competition.
It runs in our family for some reason. And she said, "You want your brother?" Yeah, never would I ask for him to come. Not that I don't want him here, just like I don't feel like I need him. It's okay, don't bother him. But my answer was like, "Yep." And honestly, guys, I closed my eyes and then I opened them up and he's standing there. I'm like, how the fuck? What did you get? Take some portal over here? Yeah. He's like, that was yesterday, dude. So like, it was just like the craziest. Yeah, man. I don't know. Just a
total trip.
The reason why I want to talk to people about this shit is I don't want anyone else to ever experience this.
Yeah.
And if I can give them some nuggets about life and what to get out of life and how to enjoy things a little bit differently based on what I went through, so that hopefully you don't have to go through it and find out the hard way. That would be great.
So Brad, like when the dust settles, right? And you come back to like this world and this timeline. What are you told? Like what's the extent of the injuries? What are you projected, or what are they projecting on you in terms of like what the next few years are going to look like? What were your injuries? What did they think in terms of like recovery? Like what did that all look like for you once you started actually having these conversations?
So it started before they even did surgery, the conversation, right? Everyone even to this day, we're like, dude, you have a severe fucking spinal cord injury. Mm-hmm. Like, you are 1 in a million. Like, people your age do not come out of this unscathed. A lot of people your age would have been dead. A lot of people your age would have been a quadriplegic. A lot of people your age would have neurological issues because of you hitting your fucking head. Like, no one your age, because I'm an older man, walks away from this type of shit, let alone fucking does what you're doing. So that was the prognosis at the beginning. Like, you're a fucking 1 in a million just to be laying here talking to me. That's the surgeon's telling me this, right? He said, so basically what happened was when I hit the bus, my neck basically, think about like remember a slinky when you're a kid?
Yeah.
The slinky was fully compressed.
Okay.
Down, so my neck was compressed. So the C6, C7 vertebrae right here, I think they call it balloons. So think about when you make, what do you call them? When you have the s'more, when you squish a s'more together in the
stuff,
the
marshmallow,
the marshmallow pops out the side.
Yeah.
That's what happened to my C6 and C7 discs. They got so compressed, they popped out. And I think they called it ballooning. So they're like, Brad, you've got some serious ballooning going on. And that's why I couldn't move, because the whole system was so kind of inflamed and so much swelling and shit going on. It was so bad that think about how bad that has to be for a neurological message not to get through. Like, it shut down the highway, right?
Right.
And then he was like, oh, by the way, he was telling my wife, because I was kind of in and out, his C5, which is not related to the accident, is fucking gone. It's crushed.
Oh my God.
So he's been walking around with a spinal cord injury for years.
Oh! This was not even that they were like.
By the way, we just found this
Holy
out
shit.
when we were looking.
Do you know? Do
They're
you know
like-
when the fuck that could have happened?
I think I do know, and just to give you some background, I had serious issues with my shoulder for years. I'm like rehab on my shoulder, and I couldn't move it. I had to sleep with it over my head, probably for fucking 4 years like that, right? And that was all related to the C5, because the C5 is basically crushed, and everything was sitting on the nerve, which was impacting my shoulder. So I think it was, I was doing single track on my mountain bike with a good buddy of mine, and I come down this big downhill, but it had whoops on it, which are just bumps, and I was riding over these whoops, but I got high-sided. My back wheel hit one of the whoops, and when that hit the whoop, it kicks the tail up.
Yeah.
So when it kicks the tail up, it throws me off the bike. I went off the bike, and I was probably going 40, 50 clicks an hour. I went off the bike, but I was upside down with my head down where my feet should be, flying through the air, and I hit a tree.
Oh
Jesus
my back.
Brad.
So my back, I hit the tree upside down and just slid down the tree, and I just laid there. And this English guy, I don't know, this English guy happened to be riding by. He goes, "Yo, dude, you took that like a fucking champ."
Holy fuck, Brad! I feel like you missed your calling, dude. I feel like you would have been a perfect addition to the new crew on Jackass, like
with Travis Pastrana and those guys.
Yeah.
So I got up from that accident. I got up from that, and my buddy rolls up because he was behind me, and he's like, "Dude, what happened?" I said, "Dude, I think I just hit that tree upside down," and I can't move my fucking shoulder. So my shoulder, I couldn't even move it. I had to ride home with one hand on the on my handlebar. So I believe that's the time I messed up the C5. Because my shoulder was useless after that for a while.
So then when they know that the ballooning is happening in your C6 and C7, what does recovery and rehab look like from that point?
So they basically said, "Okay, you got ballooning. We got to do surgery on that." And I'm like, "Okay." Thinking the Canadian healthcare system, I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll go home, and what do I come back in 6 months?" They're like, "No, you gotta fucking do that. Like, we gotta do that right now. You cannot take that. I have it over here in my room, but I wore a neck brace for fucking ever. Anyway, I had this neck brace on. They're like, "You cannot take that fucking neck brace off, because if one bad movement, you could sever your cord, and you will be a quad."
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And I'm like, "Holy fuck!" And then I was laying there, I wouldn't move. I was petrified, because I'm like, I don't want to move. And they said, once we do the surgery, a lot of your pain that you have, which is all nerve related right now, and your hands and stuff, will start to progressively get better. But it's going to take a long time. But you'll start to feel better right away after the surgery. But you'll still have a long road ahead.
Yeah.
And so I was number one on the list of surgeries at St. Mike's, which is a great hospital. God bless them. But it's also the trauma unit for downtown Toronto. So any knife wounds or gun wounds or whatever, go there. So I got bumped for 2 days.
No.
So think about, they're telling you, I'm in pain. They're telling you if you get surgery, you're going to get relief. So in your mind, you're like, "Okay, let's do this right now, because I need some relief." And then they make you wait. I think it was a day and a half, actually. So I had that day and a half, I had so many panic attacks. Like I was jacked up on Ativan. Yeah. I was jacked up on Hydromorph. I must have cried. Not from pain. I wasn't crying from like I'm in pain. I was crying from just mental anguish.
You're overwhelmed.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Like I cried enough to fill a lake, bro.
Yeah.
Like Lake Ontario. It was uncontrollable. I couldn't, and there's no shame in it. Like I was like, whatever. Fuck, I don't give a fuck who sees me. I'm fucking sobbing like crazy. Like I look like a crazy person. So Yeah, and then they did the surgery and they rebuilt my neck here, right? So I got a scar across my lower neck, right, kind of right where you're right at the top of your clavicle across the front here. And they went in, they did it. So now I've got 2 synthetic discs with a titanium plate over top that screws it all together.
Whoa.
Then they jam bone marrow in there. Over time, that bone marrow encompasses everything and it becomes like a cinder block.
Wow.
So now it's just fucking frozen, right? So it's like that thing, knock on wood, allegedly will never break. It's like super fucking strong.
You should get hit by a bus and test that out. Let's see what the.
Well, that's what they said. I said, what? This fucking doctor. I'm like, this is a bit early for this joke, but he's like, I'm like, am I at risk? He goes, not unless you get hit by another bus. I'm like, fucking guy. Like,
Yeah.
so, and then I was in ICU for quite a while, and I couldn't move, and they were feeding me. I don't know if when you're a kid, your mom give you those little applesauce containers.
Yeah.
They were feeding me applesauce. I couldn't feed myself, so my brother was feeding me applesauce with a little wooden spoon that you get at the fair when you get ice cream.
Yeah.
That's what I had for like 4 days. That's all I could get because my throat was so swollen from the surgery. It was just a fucking motley crew of. It was just like, just ongoing fucking bullshit. One thing after another, after another, after another.
Obviously, something that traumatic is going to have a lasting effect, and there's, it's evident that there is that there's like some pretty hardcore sort of physio and recovery. I mean, did you have to? I don't want to make any assumptions here. We're talking to you on like a virtual platform. I'm assuming you're not standing up right now, but also I'm making an assumption that you don't use a wheelchair right now. Or am I wrong?
No. So I'll just go back to like you cannot get released from the hospital unless you get like there's 3 different things, like your surgeon, I don't know, somebody else, and then physiotherapist. Like you got to get checkbox like to do certain things, right? So I guess around the 6th or 7th day, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna try to get you up and walk." I'm like, okay. So I had 2 grown ass big fucking men. I'm like, I don't need you guys. I get up and walk. I got up. I just crumbled. I couldn't even hold my own weight. So I had these 2 guys hold me up on either side. Put me on like an old walker that you see like an old person walk on with the 4 things and the wheels and shit. And that's how they had to teach me how to walk using that, bro.
Wow.
And
what was that?
that
like?
doesn't take.
What was that like though? Like
yeah.
like emotionally, thinking that you're going to be able to get up and walk, and then finding out very quickly that you can't in that moment.
Remember what I said about I love doing things I can't?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to fucking do this thing.
Yeah.
There's no way this is not going to work. So when I crumbled down, I was kind of almost giggling a little bit like, oh, this is going to be a fucking challenge.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah, here we go, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh, man.
so basically they told me, like, you're going to probably use a cane the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
My wife said my face when they said that was like, I was just like, a fucking cane? Are you fucking kidding me? I'm not touching a cane ever. And she said, okay, that's a great attitude, but just mentally prepare yourself for a cane.
Yeah.
So that, for the next 2 days, I fucking walked. I don't know, when you go into a unit in a hospital, it's they kind of, you can walk around in like a circle around, all the nurses are in the middle and you can go around.
Yeah.
I did a fucking 1,000 laps around there, just nonstop. And the nurses are like, dude, you're fucking nut. I'm like, yeah, I'm not using a cane. So by the time the physio came back, I was walking with no walker, no nothing. She's like, okay, I guess you don't need a cane. I'm like, fuck, I'm not using a cane.
How long did this take? Like for you to from crumbling to like going
3 days.
Wow, dude.
Whoa.
Were they astounded? Were they like, you're a freak?
They just thought I was insane. They were like,
Yeah.
this guy's fucking nut. They're like, this is the craziest guy we've ever had in the ward. They're like, we've never had a guy on our ward that broke his neck and as happy as you. Because I was fucking... We were joking and laughing. I had so many people come in. They're like, you can only have 2 or 3 people in here at a time. I'd have like 12.
Yeah.
But obviously too, like, and hearing that you might need a cane for the rest of your life. I mean, I imagine that you're thinking about what that might mean for skateboarding in the future too. Like, was that going through your mind?
I think at one point early on in the trauma, I was like, skateboarding right now, it's not dead to me, but I need to put that obsession down the list of things to worry about, right? Like, it wasn't initially something that was fuel to drive my recovery, to be honest, like in the early days. Like, I was so like focused on just being able to fucking walk without a cane. That was my first obsession. The second obsession was to be able to use my hands. I couldn't use the washroom by myself, right? I had to have help. Like, there's all these little challenges that people take for granted every day that you guys do, we do now, that became these little milestones for me. And I almost like going into skateboarding, my obsession with learning how to skate, it turned into learning how to live again. And it was like, my first obsession was, how do I get back to being Brad? Because I kept telling my wife, like, I'm not Brad anymore.
Yeah.
I mentally don't feel like Brad. I went from 178 pounds down to 147.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't look like Brad. I'm not the person I used to be. That slowly evolved into, I'm not going to be that Brad, but I need to figure out how to mold the new version of Brad.
Yeah.
Like, keep the pieces that are good and get rid of the shit that I don't like, and try to mold myself into and find out who the new Brad is. And I think other people that are going through trauma have to consciously make a decision, like, I'm never going to be the old Jeremy, but I'm going to be a new version of that dude, and I'm going to try to be a better version of that, whether it's better mental outlook on life, better physical, whatever that may be in the context of what the situation is. But I think that's a decision people have to make. That's my lesson. One of my lessons out of this is, like, I may not be that guy, but I'm going to be a version of that guy, and I'm hoping to be a better version of that guy.
Can I ask you, Brad? I think when we're put in a situation where we experience some sort of trauma that is inevitably going to set us back in a big way, there's to have the resilience to bounce back from that in a really positive way takes an extraordinary amount of fortitude, physically and mentally. But like what I'm hearing you say is, like, the mindset is such a massive part of that resiliency. And it's clear that that's integral to who you are, just based on everything we've heard so far. I'm curious about where you think that resiliency comes from. Like, where do you think that's just a sort of innate quality of who Brad is, or is that learned, or like, where did this resiliency come from in general? Because I think a lot of people don't inherently have that, and so it's really easy to experience a trauma like this, and then and to not really have, like, maybe you have enough to get back to some semblance that, like, you can accept, but fuck, that's hard, and the amount of, like, power within you to take yourself to that level. It's got to come from somewhere. And I'm wondering, like, if you've put much thought into where that comes from.
Yeah, I have. And I think I'll give you a little bit of a longer answer, but I think the end answer is a bit simple. But to answer your question 5 minutes ago, I'm not in a fucking wheelchair, and I never will be, hopefully. just to circle back to that. But the resiliency thing, I think it's part of your DNA in some aspect, that you either have it or you don't. I think if you have a little bit of it, you can be conditioned mentally to achieve more resiliency, and unfortunately, I think some of that comes from bad experiences or situations that you would hope not to find yourself into, right?
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in New Brunswick. I grew up in the 70s and 80s where unemployment was pretty high, right? I think I come from a pretty poor background. My mother wasn't around probably from grade 6 on. My dad was a very bad alcoholic, so he wasn't around. So it's my two brothers and I that grew up in this house with no adults. We had no groceries. The electricity would go off a month at a time. We'd have no fucking hot water, right? So it was a dog-eat-dog world. Like, my brothers and I survived somehow. The only reason I'm telling you that, it's not a woe is me, oh fucking poor Brad. It's about that experience in life from grade 6 until now. Basically, I've had to survive, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that resiliency and tenacity to do things, for me, I think it's in me naturally. But that experience going from grade 6 up until probably till the end of high school was, those were the tough years, because you're growing as a human being. You need guidance. You need people to help you. You need people around when you're sick. We had none of that, right?
Yeah.
So it was all us. So that resiliency and the ability to deal with shit like that, I think it was formed during those years, right? So that it's a horrible way to gain something that you can turn into a positive aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of that experience kind of built it into me.
Yeah.
Fast forward to now, I am just a very simple person, bro, to be honest. Like, that resilience in me, like when I'm working out, like doing rehab and shit hurts and I'm fucking tired and I don't want to do it, what drives me is just so simple. Like, all the work that I'm putting in now will allow me to go skate for 2 hours tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. It's like, put the work in that allows you to enjoy life and something you want to do, right? I talk to so many people at the gym that work out, and they work out. Like, I'm like, you're here every fucking day. What are you doing? Oh, I work out to work out. I'm like, that's cool. And I mean, that, whatever, floats your boat. But I work out to allow me to be strong and fit to do something else. It's like the working out is a vehicle to get me to a place where I'm able to do more of the stuff that brings joy to my life. The working out doesn't bring me that much joy, but the outcome of it brings me the joy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this, I mean, so like talking about your age, which is a big part of this, like, and the way that your body can take a beating, but also, like, the older you get, the less resilient your body becomes. I mean, that's just the inevitable sort of downfall to aging. Do you did you have any pushback from, like, your kids or your wife or anyone when you were like, all right, time to get back on the board? Like, were there concerns like, Dad, what are you, fucking crazy?
Yeah. They had an intervention with me, dude.
Actually,
they were like, they're like, we need you to stop doing this shit.
Yeah.
Right. And we, not because we don't want you to have joy in life, because we're scared and we're tired and we care for you, and we don't want to see you kill yourself or become a quadriplegic or whatever bad thing could potentially happen, right?
And how did that feel for you? Like, that conversation, how did that pan out?
It sucked, man. I was like so devastated to hear that I was putting them at mental anguish.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the people you love, you don't want to hurt. Well, I don't want to hurt anybody, but I specifically don't want to put my loved ones in mental pain or whatever, right? So so I listened. I promised that I wouldn't do as crazy shit as I used to. And it just slowly started over time. Like, I'll just go hang out with the boys. I'll go push around a little bit. I really, really focused on rehab. I was at rehab probably 4, 5, 6 times a week between chiropractor, physio, acupuncture, lifting weights probably 3 or 4 times a week, and then doing PT. So I'd lift weights probably 5 times a week, physio twice, chiro twice. So I turned my recovery in to my new skating. There's one day, so I'll finish the answer. So it slowly became in my family, my kids, my wife, seeing the fact that if we take skating away from him, it's more anguish on all of us, because it's what people don't understand with a trauma is outside the physical trauma. When someone says, "Yo, Jeremy, you can no longer do your podcast anymore," or whatever it is that you love in life, playing checkers, chess, whatever. Life has taken that from you. That's a traumatic event in itself. Totally. So the traumatic event has multiple small traumatic events. Broke your fucking neck. Horrible. Oh, by the way, a byproduct of that is you can't fucking skate anymore. And that's what the medical community told me. You can't fucking do anything faster than walking. So take that away from you. That's a traumatic event. So my family, over time, seen how much joy it brought back into my life, saw my attitude change, saw, I started embracing life again. And they're like, okay, you know what? The risk reward is worth it in this situation, in this context for Brad to continue to do it. Slowly, if you look at my Instagram, you'll see from when I started skating again to now, I went from the guy almost like in 49 years old to 51. Like, I'm back to skating almost the way I did skate. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the medical community will always tell you, no, you should never do that. And I am at more risk. But that conservative approach on it, I think, is a hurdle for people in those recovery situations. It actually inhibits their recovery because they don't do the shit because the doctor said not to do it.
They're like the doctors err on the side of caution.
Totally.
And, and I don't want to use the word excuse, but for lack of a better word, it like creates this like sort of permission for the person to be like, well, the doctor said I shouldn't do that, so I'm not going to do it. Even though
I mean, another way to put it is like it ensues a bit of a fear. Like,
right.
Like, I mean, personally for myself, living with cystic fibrosis, I remember I started to start working out with Brian a few years ago. I went to CrossFit and I like fucking busted my ass. Like, it was the hardest workout of my life. And I went in, I just happened to have a blood test the next day, and I got a call from the CF clinic, and they were like, yo, whatever you're doing, you got to stop. Like, your CK levels are through the roof. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And they were like, your kidneys will shut down if you keep doing what you're doing. Right. And that scared me to the degree where I was like, okay, well, fuck it, I'm not going to work out anymore, right? And like it put this sort of, put this pause on this thing that I wanted to do, and it wasn't because I was given the excuse or I was given like permission to stop. It was because I was
afraid of what might happen.
I listened to the doctors like I listened to my parents when I'm 5, where I go, well, they know and I don't know anything.
Yeah.
And
I tell you, that's one lesson, dude. Like, for me, someone tells me no, I'm like, bullshit. There's a way. There's a way. There may be not the traditional way to do it, but there's a way, right?
It's
how did I do it?
There's a gray area.
I went and I worked out like a fucking beast, bro. Like and I focused on my traps, my lats, my back, all this stuff. I went from 148 pounds, I'm back to 180, and I'm only 5'9", so I'm a little lug nut right now. But
are you still 5'9" after crushing your spine, or are you like are you a technical short king now?
I went down to 5'7" and I rebounded. So I worked out like a beast to be able to facilitate. Okay, I know I'm going to fall, because you're always going to fall. Yeah. But I'm going to be stronger. And I'm gonna build cushioning. I'm gonna build those muscles around to help offset the impact. Right.
Right.
So Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say like that, like one of the big things that I've been thinking is like, well, you didn't get hurt skateboarding. I mean, like, not that
No.
you haven't gotten hurt or had some injuries, but like your big injury wasn't from skateboarding, and you know, probably to some extent, all of the sort of trauma that you put your body through and like hitting the ground and like, you know, doing these 16 sets and, you know, obviously not making it every single time that you go and do it, is like almost like building up that resiliency of your like physical body. And I wonder, because the doctor said that, you know, like you're 1 in a million, that you're like, for someone your age getting hit by a bus like this, you know, you should be more fucked up. But like, do you think that that trauma that you've put your body through in, you know, doing all of these adrenaline sports for your entire life has prepared your body to be able to take impacts like that?
100%. I think because, well, one, I remember laying on the table stark naked, and the dudes are like, dude, if you weren't fit like you are, you'd been dead. Like, because I was laying there, they could tell that I was a fit person, right? Like, I'm not, they're like, so all the work that I have done my whole life working out, muscle memory on, like, I've fallen a million times, right? I know how to fall. Like, I look like a professional stunt person rolling around, right? Like, you learn, well, you're a skater. Part of learning a trick is learning how to fall out of that trick, because you know you're going to fall, right? So the first 2 or 3 attempts are like, oh, how do I get out of this thing? Oh, I got to go
never
this way.
done 16 sets, though.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
You know what I mean, though, right? So my body is, so to answer your question, 100%. And I don't think, I think a lot of it is luck. I think part of it is being physically fit. I think a part of it is the mobility within my body. Once I got hit and contorted, my body's used to being contorted. Yeah. So it didn't break at certain, you know, as it's twisting, it's not breaking because it's used to twisting, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think so, and I don't think a lot of people have that luxury, but hopefully a lot of people don't get run into by a bus and break their neck.
Yeah. Just stay away from buses. You'll be good. Brad, we're coming up to time here, and I got one question that we usually ask our guests, and it's a 2-part question. The first part of it is, what would you say is the biggest thing that your accident has taken away from you?
Taken away from me. I'm going to answer this probably backwards, but I think it could have taken a lot from me, but I don't think it's taken anything from me. I didn't allow it to take anything. I think that's part of why I'm where I'm at. I mean, I still have nerve issues, but that's bullshit. Put that aside. Like, I can deal with nerve issues and we'll figure it out. But there was one point when I was sitting on the front porch and I was crying for 3 hours. I remember this because this was a turning point in this whole fucking process. My wife went away. I don't know what she did. She went off to Pilates or something. She comes back 2 or 3 hours later. I'm still sitting in the same porch, same. I don't even think I moved for 2.5, 3 hours. And I was crying. And by the time she came back, I still had tears on my face, but I was fucking smiling. And she said, "What the fuck are you smiling about? Like, what's going on here? You got tears?" And I had an epiphany, or something hit me, and I'm like, this fucking thing isn't taking anything from me. And I told her right there, I said, I'm going to be the gold medal winner of fucking recovery. I'm not allowing this thing to take anything from me. And fast forward a year and a half, I can do everything I've done before. Is it as good? Maybe not. But I can do it. Like, I skate. Yeah. I deadlift the other day. I think I deadlifted 350 pounds.
Okay, it's not a competition. I mean, chill out. Relax.
It is, though. You got the gold medal.
But it's a competition with myself, right?
Totally,
like, it's like
it.
I'm not letting this fucking thing take one thing from me. Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, it's been a tough road, and throughout the process, it's like, okay, I can't do that, but I can't do it yet. Yeah. I'm gonna fucking do it. And so I do everything that I used to. When I'm doing it, not, like my mobility, like people that see me skate, you guys can watch some of my clips on Instagram. I don't look like a guy that broke his neck.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that, you would be like, he's just an old guy out there ripping around. Right? So I didn't answer your question directly, but maybe not the way you wanted to, but that's my answer. Like, it didn't take fuck all from me.
Yeah. Well, the second part of that question is, what's the biggest thing that it's given you?
I think one thing that I learned from this, and it's life is fleeting, right? Like life is quick. We're all gonna die at some point from something. So what I took from it, and I hope other people will realize this without having to go through it, is because life is so fast, don't waste any fucking time. And when I say that, I mean lots of people say that, but I am conscious of doing things that feed my soul. Where before I would go off and do something where it's like, I just got to do this to fill a couple hours. No, don't do anything just to fill a fucking couple hours. Do something that's going to fill your soul for a couple hours. Whether that's, I go skateboarding, or whether you go crochet a sweater. If that's what fills your soul, go do that. Mm-hmm. If you want to take a nap for 2 hours, some people would say you're lazy. Yeah, but maybe that's what makes you happy. So take a fucking nap.
Yeah.
I get a win-win because when I do what you want with the people you want. And the second part of that equation is the people. Spend time with people that you enjoy spending time with. Fills your soul. Makes you laugh. Like, I'm not wasting my time with people I don't want to be around. And I would do that before just because I'm like, I got nothing to do. I'll go do this. No, fuck that. Go do something that you want to do and be with people you want to be with. Because life, you could get run over by a bus tomorrow. And then fucking it's over, right? So I get a win-win because I get to go skate and do what I want. And I do it with the best people in the world. Like, the community is awesome. And I have so much fun. I laugh. I learn skating. I learn life lessons. I learn all kinds of shit because the community within the skate world is so diverse, right?
Yeah.
The people are from all walks of life. So it's fantastic. So I really learned to use my time better in the context of being with the people I love and doing things I love. Skateboarding is not the only thing, obviously. There's other things that I like to do, but I do it very conscious of the fact that I'm doing it with people I want to be with and I'm doing things I want to do versus just trying to fill a gap.
Well, Brad, man, you are, I fucking love this conversation. I think you're, I mean, I said at the top, certified badass. You truly are through and through. Thank you so much for taking time to share your story with our audience.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I could probably talk for another 3 hours. If
how can people find you if people want to, like, you know, just I mean, even just to see some of your tricks and shit like that? How can people follow along?
So on Instagram, like all my clips are on Instagram. It's I think it's at BRSINO Arseneau.
Amazing, Brad.
So
thanks.
then the patient voice, which if they want to read the story.
Yeah, I'll put the link to the story in the show notes because it is, I mean, again, I'll have to go back and read it now because I stopped halfway through, but there's some rad photos there and patient voice. I mean, the work that they are doing is incredible.
Yeah, I love those guys.
I've had the pleasure of working with them. A lot of like really amazing stories, and a number of guests that have been on the show have been featured there. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well.
And there's some filmmakers that I skated in a music video probably 3 or 4 years ago. No, right when I first started skating. Anyway, some of the filmmakers on that had heard my story through the community, reached out. So we just got done filming a documentary that's going to come out in the spring.
Sick.
Sweet.
Dude, let us know. Let us know when that comes out. We'll direct people to it.
It's going to bring basically what we talked about together in a visual, right?
Yeah.
So it's I've never done anything like that before.
Yeah.
I never really had aspirations to.
Yeah.
But honestly, once I start doing it, I'm like, dude, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like I like the ability to, you know, get the story out and talk about it. And so that's coming out. It should be out. Right now the working title is Unbroken. Should be out. It's going to premiere at the Bevy in Toronto, which is a local skate kind of event center.
Sick.
But then we got to figure out how does the world potentially get to see it,
Yeah.
if it's worthy of seeing, you know?
I love it.
What I have found out through this process is there's a million people like me, right? And I think we said that earlier in the show. It's just people are sometimes hesitant to tell their story, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a small community in the grand scheme of things, but there's lots of people out there that have done really, like, you know, got through some crazy shit and have stories to tell. It's just finding that channel to tell them, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
for taking the time to come on this channel and to share your story. It means the world to us.
Anytime, guys. I'd love it. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah,
Thanks, brother.
next time we're in Toronto, we'll hit you up.
Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I'll try an ollie and bust my head open again. Just for
We'll
you.
go skate and have a beer or something.